Cold, calculated, and dripping in wealth, an oil tycoon sat atop his empire, scheming. His eyes were as black as the oil that made him rich, and his heart pumped with cruel intentions. For years he had built his empire, brick by brick, oil well by oil well. His next big move? Stealing from the very veins that pumped black gold through the heart of Korea. This tycoon was known to the world as a cold-hearted moneymaker, a businessman who knew no limits. His story, however, was not as simple as it seemed. Once upon a time, he was just another face in the crowd, a hopeful dreamer with visions of riches and power. He was a small-time investor, a man with a big-time dream. But he was persistent. He knew what he wanted, and he knew how to get it. He started small with a single well. He worked tirelessly day and night to make his dream a reality. His first well struck gold, black gold. He built his empire from the ground up, relentlessly, step by relentless step. Oil was his life, his passion. He was a man obsessed. He poured every ounce of his energy, every penny of his wealth, into building his empire. His wealth grew, as if by magic. He reveled in his success, but he was not satisfied. His thirst for power, for control, was insatiable. He wanted more, always more. He wanted the world, and he was determined to take it. Every barrel of oil he sold, every dollar he made only fueled his ambition. He was a man on a mission, a man who would stop at nothing to achieve his dreams. His empire expanded, reaching far and wide. His influence grew, his power was unmatched. He was the king of his own world, a world built on black gold. His next move was clear. He had his sights set on Korea, the heartland of black gold. He had a plan to steal from the very veins that powered Korea. His wealth grew, as did his thirst for power and control. He was unrelenting, unstoppable. His ambition was his drive. His wealth was his weapon. His empire was his fortress. His oil wells were his arsenal. And he would stop at nothing to achieve his dream. But as they say, power corrupts. And with time, the once humble tycoon bloomed into a figure of growing restlessness and insatiable ambition. For him, the world was a game board, and he was its master. He was a man who had scaled the peaks of success, tasted the intoxicating wine of triumph, and yet he yearned for more. The pipelines, the veins, the lifeblood of the Korean cities, precious black gold, tantalizingly became his next target. He was drawn to those pipelines, their rhythmic pulsating, carrying the essential resource between the vast, bustling metropolises. A connection of potential and prosperity, of life and livelihood. They were the arteries of Korea's beating industrial heart, and he yearned to control that heartbeat. He viewed the pipelines not simply as a means to transport oil, but as a conduit to extend his sphere of influence. His plan to seize control was painstaking and meticulous. Nothing was left to chance. He reached out the old hands of the oil business, grizzled veterans who had seen the industry ebb and flow, men whose lives were intertwined with the capricious whims of the oil markets, men who understood the language of the pipelines as if they were whispering sweet nothings in their ears. He tapped into this reservoir of knowledge, of experiences accumulated over years of toil. He studied the routes, those winding paths that snaked through the heart of Korea. He memorized the schedules, the arrival and departure of barrels of oil, as if it was a ballet performance under his command. He analyzed the security, scrutinizing every detail with an eagle's eye. The patrols, the guards, the monitoring systems, he learnt them all, inside out. Every corner of the pipelines, every weak point was noted down, studied, considered. Every possibility was contemplated, every eventuality planned for. He left no stone unturned, no shadow unexplored. He was ready to make his move, to seize control, to make the heartbeat of Korea dance to his tunes. Every detail was scrutinized, every possibility was considered. But as they say, power corrupts. With a team of experts at his disposal, he set his plan into motion. He was a tycoon, a man of enormous wealth and power, who had built his empire through years of strategic business decisions and ruthless competitiveness. His world was one of opulence and extravagance, his name synonymous with success, and yet he craved more. He yearned a thrill that his fortune couldn't buy, a challenge that would excite his senses, and thus a plan was born, an audacious plan of deception and theft. It was to be carried out with the utmost discretion, a phantom operation that would divert oil from the pipeline, a slight diversion unnoticed and unaccounted for. The stolen then be transported under the cloak of night, navigating through a labyrinth of hidden routes away from watchful eyes. The dark shadows of the night would be their accomplice, providing the perfect cover for their clandestine activities. This stolen oil, millions of gallons of liquid gold, would then find its way to the black market. There, it would be sold, exchanged hands, and transformed into a mountain of cash that would further line the pockets. His wealth would grow exponentially, each successful operation adding another layer to his impenetrable fortress of fortune. However, even the best-laid plans can fall apart, and his was no exception. There was a crack in the facade, a weak link in his otherwise seamless operation. A whistleblower emerged from within his inner circle, a person who had of his trusted cadre but now turned against him. This individual, driven by a sense of justice or perhaps guilt, tipped off the authorities, providing them with valuable information that threatened to dismantle the tycoon's entire operation. The news of the informant spread like wildfire within his network, creating a ripple of fear and uncertainty. Suddenly, the once invincible tycoon seemed vulnerable, his grand scheme on the verge of collapsing. It was as if a ticking time bomb had been set, and there was no way to defuse it. The tycoon's grand scheme was unraveling. The authorities acted swiftly. They crafted an elaborate ruse, a complex web of deception, awaiting the precise moment when the tycoon, a man of unmeasurable wealth and power, would make his dangerous move. The tension was palpable, the proverbial calm before the storm. It was a waiting game, a test of patience, but time was a luxury they had, and they were prepared to use it. Every minute detail of their plan was meticulously coordinated, a true testament to the determination and tenacity of the law enforcement officers. They were an unmovable force, strong in their resolve to bring justice. They had been tracking the tycoon months, gathering evidence and shaping their strategy. The magnitude of their mission only added to the intensity of their vigilance. The trap was set, the stage was ready, and they waited with bated breath. Suddenly, the tycoon and his team of highly skilled accomplices made their move. It was a bold one, a daring play, but the authorities were well prepared. The tycoon and his team, engrossed their plan, failed to notice the subtle signs of the impending strike. The trap was closing in on them, but they remained blissfully unaware. And when they did finally realize their precarious situation, it was too late. They were met with the full force of the law, an unyielding wall of justice. Operation was swift, precise, and overwhelming. The tycoon was cornered, his escape route sealed and his accomplices neutralized. The authorities acted with a ruthless efficiency that left no room for resistance. Caught in the very act, the tycoon's empire crumbled like a house of cards in a gale. He was arrested, his vast assets seized. His reputation, once of success and opulence, now lay in ruins. The media feasted on his downfall. The public watched in shock and awe as the untouchable tycoon was handcuffed and led away. The man who once sat atop an oil empire, controlling the global energy markets with a mere wave of his hand, was suddenly reduced to a common criminal. The authorities had won, justice had prevailed, and the once mighty tycoon was left to face the consequences of his actions. In conclusion, the story of the oil tycoon serves as a stark reminder. No matter how high one climbs, no matter how untouchable one seems, the law always has the last say. This tycoon's fall from grace was swift and brutal, a tale of greed and corruption that ended in ruin. This video has unfolded the events of a wealthy oil tycoon's audacious plan to steal from Korean oil pipelines, his meticulous planning, the ultimate betrayal that led to his downfall, and the swift justice that followed. In the world of crime, not even the wealthy and powerful are immune from the long arm of the law. Remember, every action has a consequence, and sometimes these consequences can bring down even the mightiest of empires.